The desert of HFY stretched beneath a sky choked with twin suns. A sea of crimson dunes that shimmered like molten glass under the relentless heat, where the wind didn't howl so much as whisper secrets to the cracked stone spires that rose like the ribs of some long-dead god. It was a world that swallowed sound, swallowed hope, and for 3 days, it had swallowed the last of the royal family's water. Lyra, the empress of the Vrithian hive, moved like a shadow across the dunes, her purple skin glistening with sweat and dust, her long white hair matted with grit, each strand trembling not from the heat but from the weight she carried. Her daughter, Syl, barely 6 cycles old, her small body limp against Lyra's chest, her breathing shallow as the sigh of a dying star. Syl's skin, usually a luminous amethyst, had dulled to the color of old bruises, her delicate white hair clinging to her forehead in damp clumps, her eyes half-lidded, too weak to focus on anything but the blurred silhouette of her mother's face. "Don't cry, Momma," she whispered, her voice a thread of sound lost in the wind. "Maybe that human will help us." It wasn't hope she spoke of. It was the last fragile prayer of a child who had learned too soon that the universe was not kind. Lyra didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was raw from screaming for aid that never came. The human commander had been sighted 2 days prior, a lone figure in a battered exosuit standing atop the obsidian ridge known as the Broken Crown, watching the Vrithians with cold, calculating eyes. He was no rescuer. He was a soldier of the Terran front, a man sent to claim HFY's mineral veins, a man who had already raised 3 settlements in the name of progress. Lyra had seen his kind before, men who saw alien life as obstacles, not beings. But now, with Syl's pulse fading like a candle in a hurricane, Lyra had no pride left to hold. She staggered forward, dragging her daughter's weight through the burning sand, until the ridge loomed above her. And there he stood, Commander Ren Voss, tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden beneath a cracked helmet, his armor scarred from a dozen battles, his rifle slung across his back like an afterthought. He didn't move when he saw them, didn't raise his weapon, didn't speak, just watched. And for the first time in his life, Ren Voss felt something he had been trained to suppress. Shame. He had been ordered to eliminate all non-compliant Vrithian settlements, to clear the land for the mining drones that would strip HFY bare. He had followed orders without question until now. He had seen the Vrithians as primitive, emotional, inefficient. He had called them purple savages in his private logs. But he had never seen a child. Not like this. Not with eyes that still held wonder even as they dimmed. He remembered his own sister, long dead from a fever in the quarantined slums of New Cairo, her small hands clutching his fingers as she whispered, "I'm scared, Ren." He hadn't been able to save her then. He wouldn't fail again. Without a word, he turned and walked back into the ruins of the abandoned Terran outpost perched on the ridge, the same outpost he had been ordered to occupy, the same outpost where he had left his last ration pack, his last water filter, his last medkit. He returned moments later, his boots crunching over broken alloy, his expression unreadable. He knelt in the sand, ignoring the heat searing through his suit, and gently took Syl from her mother's arms. Lyra flinched, her claws flexing, her body trembling with the instinct to fight, to protect, to die if she had to. But Ren didn't move to harm her. He cradled the girl as if she were made of glass and starlight, his calloused fingers brushing away the dust from her forehead. His voice low, rough, but strangely soft. "You're going to be okay," he said, not as a commander, not as a soldier, but as a man who had once held a dying child and wished, with every broken piece of his soul, that he could trade places with her. He activated the medkit, the blue glow of its scanner flickering over Syl's body. Her vitals were failing, dehydration, renal collapse, neural degradation from prolonged exposure to HFY's toxic dust. He injected her with the last of his nutrient gel, pressed the hydration patch to her wrist, and wrapped her in his thermal blanket, the same one he used to sleep with on freezing nights when the stars felt too far away. He looked up at Lyra, whose eyes, once filled with fury, now held only a quiet, broken plea. "I won't let her die," he said. And for the first time since the war began, Ren Voss broke protocol. He radioed his command. "This is Voss. I'm withdrawing from Sector Gamma. I have a non-combatant situation. I'm taking the child and her mother to the medical station on the northern ridge. If you want to court-martial me, do it after I get them there." The silence on the comm was thick enough to choke on. Then, cold and clipped, "Voss, you're insubordinate. You're ordered to terminate all alien life forms in this zone. Do you understand?" Ren didn't answer. He simply cut the transmission. They traveled through the night, Ren carrying Syl in a sling across his chest, Lyra stumbling behind him, her steps faltering but relentless. The desert didn't forgive. Sandstorms rolled in like angry ghosts, howling with the voices of the dead, burying their path in minutes. Ren used his suit's thrusters to carve a path through the swirling crimson, shielding Syl with his body. His armor screeching as grains pelted it like bullets. Lyra, weakened, collapsed twice, and each time Ren stopped, knelt beside her, and offered her a sip of water from his last reserve, even though he knew it would cost him. "You don't have to do this," she rasped, her voice like wind over stone. "I am the Empress. My people will hunt you. They will kill you for this." Ren didn't look at her. He just adjusted the blanket around Syl, whose tiny fingers had curled around the edge of it, gripping it like a lifeline. "I'm not doing it for your people," he said. "I'm doing it for her." It was the first time he had spoken more than 5 words at once since he'd been deployed. Lyra stared at him, stunned. No human had ever spoken to her like that. Not with kindness, not with honesty. She had been taught that humans were cold, calculating, devoid of soul. But this man carried a child as if she were his own. By dawn, they reached the ruins of an ancient Vrithian temple, half buried by time and sand, its obsidian arches still standing like the bones of a forgotten god. Inside, the air was cool, the walls humming faintly with residual energy from a long-dead power core. Ren laid Syl on a smooth stone slab and activated the last of the medkit's emergency protocols. The machine whirred, its holographic interface flickering weakly. "It's not enough," he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "I need a neural stabilizer, a Vrithian-specific antitoxin." He turned to Lyra. "Do you know where we can find one?" Lyra's eyes widened. "The Crystal Spire, 3 clicks east. It's sacred. The High Priestess guards it. No human has ever entered." Ren didn't hesitate. "Then we go now." He slung his rifle over his shoulder, picked up Syl again, and followed Lyra into the labyrinth of crumbling corridors, where murals of ancient Vrithians danced across the walls, their white hair flowing like rivers of moonlight, their faces serene, their hands raised toward a sky full of stars. The air grew colder. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent moss. And then, at the heart of the temple, they found her. The High Priestess, a towering figure draped in robes woven from living silk, her skin shimmering with silver veins, her eyes glowing like twin moons. She did not speak. She did not move. She simply watched them, her gaze resting on Syl, then on Ren, then back to Syl. "The child carries the mark of the twin moons," the priestess finally said, her voice echoing as if spoken from 1,000 throats at once. "She is the last heir of the bloodline of Lasara. If she dies, the hive's soul dies with her." Ren swallowed hard. "Then help her." The priestess tilted her head. "You are a warrior of the outer world. You have come to steal, to conquer, to burn. Why do you carry her as if she were your blood?" Ren looked down at Syl's pale face, her lips slightly parted, her breath so faint he could barely feel it. "Because I failed once," he said, his voice cracking. "I won't fail again." The priestess was silent for a long time. Then she reached into her robes and withdrew a small, glowing orb, the Heartstone of Vyarwitich, a relic that could heal any wound, restore any life, but only if given freely, with no demand, no price, no expectation of return. "Take it," she said. "But know this, the Heartstone does not heal the body alone. It heals the soul that gives it. If you take it for selfish reasons, it will turn to ash in your hands." Ren didn't ask what that meant. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and took the orb. The moment his skin touched it, warmth flooded through him. Not just heat, but something deeper, older, like the memory of a lullaby his mother used to hum when he was sick. He placed the Heartstone gently against Syl's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the stone began to glow brighter, pulsing in time with Syl's heartbeat. A soft violet light spread across her skin, knitting together the cracks in her veins, clearing the toxins from her lungs, mending the fractures in her neural pathways. Her eyelids fluttered. A tiny gasp escaped her lips. Then, with a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze, she opened her eyes. They were no longer dull. They were bright, clear, alive, and they locked onto Ren's face. "You're not a monster," she whispered. Ren's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to speak. He hadn't expected her to remember. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "No," he said softly. "I'm not." Syl smiled. A real, tiny, perfect smile. And then, with surprising strength, she reached up and touched his cheek. Her fingers were cool, delicate, like petals. "I liked you before," she said. "You smelled like rain." Ren blinked. "Rain? On my mother's stories," Syl whispered. "She said Earth had rain. It fell from the sky and made everything green." Ren's chest ached. "Yeah," he said, his voice thick. "It did." They stayed in the temple for 3 days. Syl recovered faster than any medical log had predicted. She sat up, ate the nutrient paste Ren offered her with messy, delighted enthusiasm, and began asking questions. About stars, about Earth, about why humans wore metal suits and carried big guns. Lyra watched them, her expression unreadable, but her posture had changed. She no longer hunched in fear. She stood tall, and sometimes, when Ren wasn't looking, she would smile, just a little. On the 4th morning, as the twin suns rose over the dunes, painting the desert in gold and crimson, Syl climbed onto Ren's lap, her small body warm against his armored chest, and asked, "Will you come back?" Ren hesitated. He had orders. He had a command. He had a life on Earth he hadn't seen in 3 years. But he looked into her eyes, those wide, luminous eyes that had seen too much pain and still dared to hope, and he knew with absolute certainty that he couldn't leave. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I have to go back." Syl's face fell, just a little, but then she reached into the pouch at her side, the one she had carried since birth, the one her mother had told her held the most precious thing in the galaxy, and pulled out a small, woven bracelet made of silver thread and glowing moss. "Then take this," she said, pressing it into his palm. "It's a bond weave. When you wear it, I'll know you're thinking of me." Ren stared at it. It was simple, beautiful, alive. He fastened it around his wrist. It hummed faintly, a soft vibration against his skin. "I'll think of you," he promised. But the universe, as it often does, had other plans. They had barely left the temple when the sky split open. Not with lightning, not with storm, with war. A Terran orbital strike team had tracked Ren's unauthorized signal. They had interpreted his silence as rebellion. And rebellion, in the eyes of the front, was a death sentence. 3 dropships descended like vultures, their engines screaming as they tore through the atmosphere, kicking up dust storms that blotted out the sun. Ren shoved Lyra and Syl behind a fallen pillar as plasma fire erupted around them, melting sand into glass, shattering stone into dust. The Vrithians had no weapons, no defenses, just a child, a mother, and a man who had broken every rule to save them. "Run!" Ren shouted, pulling his rifle free. "I won't leave you," Lyra hissed. "You have to," he roared. "Take her to the caves beneath the spire. I'll hold them off." Syl clung to her mother's neck, her small hands trembling, but her voice was steady. "Don't cry, Momma," she whispered again. "Maybe that human will help us." Ren didn't wait for them to move. He charged. He ran straight into the storm of fire, his armor taking hits that would have killed a dozen men, his movements precise, brutal, efficient. He didn't fight to win. He fought to buy time. He disabled one dropship with a grenade to its landing thrusters, sending it spiraling into the dunes. He shot out the sensors on the second, plunging its crew into chaos. He used the terrain, the broken arches, the shifting sands, the narrow canyons, as weapons. He was a storm in human form, a whirlwind of rage and sorrow and desperate, unyielding love. But they were too many. A plasma bolt caught him in the thigh. He went down hard, his armor smoking, his leg burning with searing pain. He rolled, fired 2 shots at the approaching soldiers, and then a third bolt struck his chest plate, cracking it open. He gasped, the air rushing out of him, his vision blurring. He saw them coming. For soldiers in black armor, rifles raised, faces hidden behind visors that reflected nothing but cold efficiency. One of them raised his weapon. "Commander Voss," the soldier said, his voice distorted, mechanical. "You have violated Protocol Omega. You are hereby terminated." Ren coughed, blood on his lips. He looked at the bracelet on his wrist. He thought of Syl's smile. He thought of her saying, "You smelled like rain." He closed his eyes. And then, a sound. Not a scream, not a cry, a song. High, pure, haunting. Came from the temple. From Lyra. She stood at the entrance. Syl clutched to her chest, both of them glowing. Not with fear, but with power. The walls of the temple began to pulse. The ground trembled. The very air shimmered. The soldiers froze. "Impossible," one whispered. "The bloodline." She's activating the Heartstone's resonance. Lyra raised her arms. Her white hair lifted as if caught in an invisible wind. Her skin blazed with silver light. The Heartstone, still embedded in Syl's chest, pulsed once, then exploded outward in a wave of violet energy that didn't burn. It healed. It mended. It remembered. The soldiers' armor cracked. Their weapons turned to dust. Their bodies, those cold, armored shells, began to glow, then soften, then change. Their helmets fell away. Their faces, once blank and cruel, now looked confused, terrified, human. One of them dropped to his knees. I remember my daughter, he sobbed. I left her on Mars. I never came back. Another wept. I was told this was justice. The energy washed over Ren, searing through his wounds, sealing his fractures, filling his lungs with air that tasted like freedom. He sat up, whole, alive. The soldiers lowered their weapons. One by one, they knelt. The sky fell silent. The twin suns shone down, warm and gentle. Lyra walked toward Ren, Syl still in her arms. The girl's eyes were bright, her smile wider than before. I told you he'd help us, she said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. Ren stared at them, his saviors, his burden, his miracle. He stood, and for the first time in his life, he didn't know what to do next. But he knew what he wanted. He knelt before Lyra, not as a commander, not as a soldier, but as a man who had found something he didn't know he'd lost. Lyra, he said, his voice hoarse but clear, I don't know if I can stay. I don't know if Earth will forgive me. But if you'll have me, I want to be here. With you. With her. Lyra looked at him, really looked. Not as an enemy. Not as a tool. Not as a stranger. She reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek, just as Syl had. And then she said, in a voice softer than the desert wind, You already are. Syl giggled, small and bright, and reached out to grab Ren's finger. Can we go to Earth now? She asked. I want to see the rain. Ren smiled, his first real smile in years, and pulled her into his arms. Yes, he said, we will. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the desert, the ancient stones of the temple hummed a new song. One of peace, of unexpected love, of a human who chose kindness over orders, and a child who believed in miracles. They didn't know what came next. They didn't need to. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough. Weeks passed like drifting sand. Slow at first, then swift, then vanishing altogether. The ruins of the Terran outpost became home, not by design but by necessity. Ren repaired the walls with scavenged alloy and Vrithian resin, his hands learning the language of this world not through conquest but craft. Lyra, once a ruler accustomed to command, now cooked over open flames, her royal robes traded for simple woven tunics, her voice no longer sharp with decree but soft with questions. Does Earth have trees that sing? Or do your children dream in color? Syl, meanwhile, grew like a desert flower after rare rain. Quick, vibrant, impossible to ignore. She followed Ren everywhere, her small bare feet padding behind his heavy boots, her white hair catching the light like spun moonlight, her laughter echoing off the obsidian cliffs until even the wind seemed to pause and listen. Their bond deepened in quiet moments. Ren teaching Syl how to track scorpions by the ripple in the sand. Syl showing him how to weave star charts from glowing moss. Lyra watching them both with eyes that softened more each day. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the sky bled into violet twilight, Syl tugged Ren's sleeve and whispered, Momma says you're not just our friend. You're our protector. Is that true? Ren knelt, meeting her gaze. I'm whatever you need me to be, he said. She considered this, then pressed her forehead to his. Then be my father, she said simply, as if stating the weather. Ren froze, not from shock, but from the sheer, terrifying weight of want that surged through him. He looked up at Lyra, who stood in the doorway of their shelter, her expression unreadable. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it. She just watched, her fingers curled around the edge of her shawl, her chest rising and falling like a storm held at bay. But peace, especially on a desert planet torn by war, is never granted, it's borrowed. And debts always come due. The first warning came in the form of a signal flare, green and jagged, streaking across the northern sky. Vrithian rebels, factions loyal to a dead warlord, had heard rumors of the Empress's survival. They believed Lyra had consorted with the enemy, that Syl's strange recovery was witchcraft, that the Heartstone had been defiled by human hands. Worse, they believed Ren had stolen Vrithian secrets to hand over to the Terran front. A bounty was placed on all three of them, dead or alive, though alive was only preferred for the child. Then came the drones. Not Terran, not Vrithian, something older, something forgotten. They descended at midnight, sleek, insectoid machines carved from black stone, their wings humming with a frequency that made teeth ache. They bore the sigil of the Silthari, a precursor race thought extinct for millennia. Their leader, a voiceless entity that communicated through projected glyphs, declared that the Heartstone's activation had awakened an ancient covenant. The bloodline of Lysara must produce an heir before the next eclipse, or the planet's core would destabilize, triggering a chain reaction that would shatter HFY-7 into dust. Lyra staggered back as if struck. An heir? She whispered. But Syl is too young. She cannot bear. The heir must be born of Lysaran blood. The glyph pulsed, but may be sired by a soul of proven worth, one who carried the child through fire, one whose heart sings the same frequency as the stone. Ren's blood ran cold. The bracelet on his wrist throbbed in response. That night, Lyra confronted him beneath the twin moons. They mean you, she said, her voice trembling not with anger but fear. The prophecy, it's you. They want you to lie with me, to give Syl a sibling, an heir before the eclipse. In 3 cycles. Ren stared at her, heart hammering. Lyra, I would never. I know, she interrupted, stepping closer. That's why I must ask. Her purple skin shimmered in the moonlight, her white hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes wide and desperate. Not for me, for her, for Syl. If the planet dies, she dies. And I cannot lose her again. She reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. I have seen your soul, Ren Voss. You are not like your kind. You are rare. He wanted to say no, to protect her dignity, his own honor, the fragile trust between them. But then Syl's voice came from the shadows. Do it, Papa. She stood there in her night robe, small and serious, clutching a doll made of desert grass. I want a brother, or a sister, one who smells like rain too. The word, Papa, hung in the air like a blessing. Ren exhaled. If we do this, he said slowly, it won't be just duty. It'll be choice. Real choice. Every day. Lyra nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Then let it be choice. The next morning, they stood before the crystal spire, not as empress and soldier, but as 2 souls bound by something deeper than war. The Silthari drones formed a silent circle, their wings still, their lights dimmed in reverence. The high priestess emerged once more, holding a chalice of iridescent liquid. Drink, she said. It will bind your essences. Should the child be conceived, it will carry the mark of both worlds. They drank. The taste was strange, metal and honey, memory and fire. Ren felt warmth bloom in his chest, spreading outward until even his bones hummed. Lyra gasped, her skin flaring silver for a moment, her eyes flashing with starlight. Their hands found each other, not out of ritual, out of need. In the days that followed, the world held its breath. Ren stopped thinking of himself as a soldier. Lyra stopped thinking of herself as alone. Syl began drawing pictures in the sand. 3 figures holding hands beneath a single sun, though Vryth had 2. She called them my family. But the universe, ever restless, refused to let them rest. On the second night before the eclipse, the Terran front returned, not with soldiers, but with a single ship, sleek and silent, bearing the insignia of the diplomatic corps. A woman stepped out, her uniform pristine, her eyes sharp as glass. Ambassador Terran Keel. She had known Ren in the academy. She had loved him once, in a way that was more ambition than affection. Ren, she said, smiling bitterly, you always did have a talent for getting into trouble. She offered him a deal. Return to Earth with proof that the Vrithians were unstable, that their planet was doomed, and the front would pardon him. Better, he'd be promoted, given a seat on the council. All he had to do was betray them. He looked past her, to where Lyra stood in the doorway, Syl peeking from behind her leg, both of them watching him with quiet trust. No, Ren said. Terran's smile vanished. Think carefully. If you stay, you're nothing but a traitor. A ghost. I'd rather be a ghost with them, he said, than a man without a soul. Terran left, but not before planting a tracker in the sand. 2 hours later, the sky lit up, not with flares, but with warships. Dozens of them. The front hadn't come to negotiate. They'd come to a race. Ren knew they couldn't win. Not this time. But then Lyra stepped forward, her hand on her belly. Already, impossibly, she felt different, as if life had already taken root, and spoke a single word in the old tongue. Vorin! The ground shook. From beneath the dunes, ancient war beasts emerged. Massive, six-legged creatures armored in living crystal, their eyes glowing with the same violet light as the Heartstone. The Vrithians had not been defenseless. They had been waiting. The battle that followed was chaos and poetry. Ren fought beside Lyra, their movements synchronized as if they'd trained together for years. Syl, safe in the temple, sang the old songs. Songs that made the beasts stronger, the sand sharper, the air itself a weapon. The Terran ships faltered. One by one they fell. When it was over, the desert was still. But something had changed. Lyra knelt, pressing her hand to the sand. "It's begun," she whispered. Ren knelt beside her. "What has?" "The child," she said, tears in her eyes. "It's coming. Now." The eclipse had not yet arrived, but life would not wait. They rushed to the temple, the high priestess already waiting, her hands glowing. Syl held Ren's hand the entire time, her small fingers gripping his like an anchor. "It'll be okay," she said, though she was trembling. "The stars told me." And when the child was born, under twin suns and a blackened moon, wrapped in silver light and the scent of desert rain, it was neither fully human nor fully Vrithian, but something new. Its skin was a soft lavender, its hair a pale silver white, and when it cried, the sound was like wind through crystal chimes. Ren held it in his arms, tears streaming down his face. Lyra leaned against him, exhausted but radiant. Syl peered over his shoulder, eyes wide with wonder. "She's perfect," she breathed. "She?" Ren asked. "Yes," Syl said, as if she'd always known. "Her name is Alara." Months later, the war ended, not with treaties, but with silence. The Terran front, humbled by the Vrithian strength and shamed by Ren's defiance, withdrew. The Siltari vanished as mysteriously as they'd come, their glyphs fading into the stars. The desert bloomed with rare flowers, their petals glowing faintly in the dark, as if the planet itself was celebrating. Ren never left. He built a new home, not in ruins, but in the heart of the Hive City, where humans and Vrithians began to trade, to learn, to heal. He taught the children Earth songs. Lyra taught him the old ways. Syl and Alara ran through the streets together, laughing, their bare feet kicking up dust that sparkled like stardust. And every evening, as the twin suns set, Ren would sit with Lyra on their rooftop, Alara in her arms, Syl leaning against his shoulder, and he would whisper, just loud enough for the stars to hear. "I wasn't looking for a family, but the desert gave me one anyway." And far below, in the quiet streets of a once-broken world, life began again. Not as it was, but as it could be, strange, beautiful, and full of rain. The years passed like soft winds over dunes, gentle, inevitable, carrying the scent of blooming star moss and the laughter of children. Alara grew with the grace of a desert bloom, her lavender skin catching the light like twilight, her silver hair always tangled with petals and tiny stones she collected from the ruins. She spoke 3 languages before she could walk: Vrithian, Terran, and the hum of the Heartstone, which still pulsed faintly beneath the temple floor, now a living part of the city's rhythm. Syl, no longer the frail child who once whispered to the wind, became a scholar of old songs and star maps, her mind a library of forgotten histories she shared with human children who came to learn. She never stopped calling Ren Papa, not even when he knelt before her on her 16th cycle, placing a woven band of silver and glowing moss around her wrist, the same one she'd given him years ago, now passed down as a symbol of bond, not blood. Lyra, once a queen of war and sorrow, ruled not from a throne but from a garden of singing vines, where humans and Vrithians sat together, sharing stories under lanterns made of hollowed crystal. Her eyes, once sharp with the weight of empire, now held the quiet glow of a woman who had loved deeply and been loved in return. She never spoke of her past as empress, not because she forgot it, but because she had outgrown it. Her crown now was the silver circlet Ren had carved for her from a fallen drone's wing, shaped like twin suns rising over a single horizon. And Ren? He never wore a uniform again. He taught children how to plant rain seeds, tiny spores that, when watered with tears or laughter, grew into trees that sang in the wind. He fixed broken machines with Vrithian resin and earth tools, turning salvage into art. He danced with Lyra under the stars on their anniversary, their movements slow and sure, as if they'd learned the rhythm of each other's hearts long before they ever spoke the words. He still woke sometimes in the night, hand instinctively going to his wrist, where the bond-weave bracelet still glowed faintly, warm as a heartbeat. On the day of Alara's naming ceremony, when the entire city gathered beneath the crystal spire, its walls now alive with murals of a human holding a child, an alien queen with a human at her side, and two girls running through a field of glowing flowers, the high priestess placed a single stone in Ren's palm. It was the Heartstone's last fragment, now grown into a new form, smooth, warm, humming with quiet power. It was never meant to heal the body, she said, her voice echoing like wind through ancient halls. It was meant to choose the soul that could hold it. You held it when you chose love over duty. You held it when you chose family over home. You held it when you stayed. Ren looked at Lyra, at Syl, at Alara, who stood beside him, her small hand already resting on his arm, her eyes bright with the same wonder he'd seen in Syl's the day she first called him Papa. I didn't choose to stay, he said softly. I chose to belong. The crowd fell silent. Then, slowly, one by one, the Vrithians knelt. Not in submission, in reverence. And then the humans followed. Not because they were commanded, but because they had seen what peace could look like. That night, beneath a sky streaked with the auroras of 1,000 distant stars, Ren and Lyra stood at the edge of the desert, where the sands met the first true rain Earth had ever sent to VR-7. A gift from the Terran Council, delivered not as apology, but as offering. The droplets fell like liquid silver, kissing the desert awake, turning the red dunes into shimmering seas. Syl and Alara ran ahead, barefoot and laughing, dancing in the downpour, their hair and skin glowing as the rain touched them. Lyra turned to Ren, her fingers brushing his cheek, just as she had the first time he held Syl. You never asked me to marry you, she said. He smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need words. I didn't need to, he replied. You already said yes. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his, their breaths mingling with the scent of wet earth and star moss. Then say it, she whispered. He looked into her eyes, the eyes of a queen, a mother, a woman who had loved him before he knew how to be loved, and he spoke, clear and true, as if the whole universe were listening. I love you, Lyra, not because you're the Empress, not because you saved me, but because you're the only soul I've ever known who made me want to be better. I want to spend every sunrise with you, every storm, every song, every child. She kissed him then, not gently, not formally, but like a woman who had waited a lifetime to say it back. I love you, Ren Voss, she whispered, more than the desert loves the rain, more than the stars love the night. They didn't need a ceremony. They didn't need a priest. The desert remembered. The Heartstone hummed. The children danced in the rain. And when the first light of dawn touched the horizon, painting the sky in gold and violet, they walked back to the city hand in hand, their daughters running ahead, singing a song they'd made up together. One about a human who smelled like rain, a queen who gave her heart to a stranger, and two little girls who turned a war-torn world into a home. 10 years later, the planet was no longer called VR-7. It was called Vera, a blend of VR-YTH and Earth, of Lyra and Ren, of two worlds that had chosen each other. The Terran Council sent emissaries, not to claim, but to learn. They brought books, seeds, music. The Vrithians taught them how to listen to the wind, how to heal with song, how to live without borders. Ren never returned to Earth. He didn't need to. He had his family. Syl married a Vrithian engineer who built wind harps from ancient drone parts, and they had twin boys who could mimic the Heartstone's hum before they could speak. Alara, now a woman of quiet power, became the keeper of the bond. She traveled between worlds, teaching humans and Vrithians alike that love was not about sameness, but about resonance. And every year, on the anniversary of the first rain, the entire city gathered at the edge of the desert, where Ren and Lyra stood beneath a tree grown from the first rain seed, its branches heavy with glowing fruit. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They just held hands. And when the sun set, and the stars came out, and the children danced beneath the singing leaves, Ren would whisper to Lyra, just loud enough for the wind to carry, I found my home in the desert, and I never wanted to leave. Lyra would smile, rest her head on his shoulder and say, neither did I. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the planet, the Heartstone pulsed once, soft, steady, eternal, not as a relic, not as a weapon, but as a promise, that love, when chosen freely, when held gently, when nurtured with patience and courage, could turn even the harshest desert into a garden, and that the most powerful magic in the universe wasn't found in ancient stones or forgotten gods. It was found in the quiet moments, in the hand that holds another, in the voice that says, "I'm here," in the child who calls you Papa and means it with every beat of her heart, and in the quiet, unshakable truth that sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with kindness, and the sweetest victories aren't won on battlefields. They're won in the quiet of a shared sunrise. And so, on the morning of the 100th anniversary of the rain, as the twin suns rose over Vera, painting the dunes in gold and violet, Ren and Lyra sat on their rooftop, Elara and Syl's children playing below, their laughter rising like music. Ren looked at Lyra, now older, her silver-white hair streaked with strands of lavender, her eyes still bright as the first day he saw her. He reached for her hand and whispered, "I'd do it all again." She squeezed his fingers and smiled. "Me too." And far above them, in the endless dark, the stars blinked once, like 1,000 silent witnesses. And then, they shone a little brighter, because love, when real, never fades. It only grows. And on Vera it had grown into a world. And in that world, there was no war, no borders, no them, only us. And it was perfect, just as it was meant to be.